Welcome to the 5-Minute History Channel. Today we bring you an in-depth look at when Texas was its own country. Please be sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you are notified of new videos. And now, enjoy the video. Before Texas became the 28th state in the U.S., it was a country all its own. From 1836 to 1845, the Republic of Texas was an independent nation, complete with embassies, a constitution, currency, a national house, and its own foreign policy. But why did it break away from Mexico in the first place? And how did it survive nearly a decade on its own? This is the dramatic story of how Texas became a country and why it chose to give that up. To understand why Texas declared independence, we have to go back to Mexico's own turbulent history. In 1821, Mexico won its independence from Spain and established a federalist republic under the Constitution of 1824. It was a liberal document, embracing representative democracy and allowing its states, like Coahuila y Tejas, significant autonomy. This liberal framework attracted Anglo-American settlers from the U.S., who were offered land grants to help populate the northern frontier. But this decentralized system didn't last. By the early 1830s, political instability gripped Mexico. President Antonio López de Santa Anna abandoned the Constitution of 1824, dissolved Congress, and centralized power under a military dictatorship. States lost their autonomy, and opposition was crushed. Texians, Anglo settlers and Tejanos alike, saw this as a betrayal. Liberalism and republicanism in Mexico were, in their eyes, dead. Many feared the loss of local governance, property rights, and personal freedoms. In the fall of 1835, as violence escalated and Santa Anna's troops marched north, delegates in Texas gathered at San Felipe for a consultation. But the provisional government fractured. With confusion mounting, the colonists called for a new popular assembly to chart a course of action. That assembly met at Washington on the Brazos in March 1836 and declared Texas a sovereign republic. As delegates signed the Declaration of Independence, the Alamo was under siege. A week later, its defenders were slaughtered, but the loss only fueled the Texan cause. On April 21, 1836, Sam Houston's army defeated Santa Anna at the Battle of San Jacinto in a stunning, decisive victory. The captured Santa Anna signed a peace agreement, and Mexico withdrew its forces. With that, the Republic of Texas was born. But winning independence was only the beginning. The Republic needed a government, and fast. A constitution was drafted largely by George Childress, who modeled it after the U.S. Constitution. As in the U.S. Constitution, it too created a tripartite system with 3 branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. It protected property rights and religious freedom, but it also enshrined slavery. Enslaved people were considered property, and free blacks were denied citizenship. Citizenship was granted to all free white males who had lived in Texas at the time of independence or who pledged loyalty to the Republic. Native Americans and black residents were excluded. It was a bold new nation, but built on very narrow definitions of belonging. In 1836 alone, the government bounced between 5 provisional capitals: Washington on the Brazos, Harrisburg, Galveston, Velasco, and Columbia. These choices were often made out of necessity, whether to escape Mexican advances or for logistical convenience. In late 1836, the capital moved to Houston, a city newly founded by the Allen brothers. It was swampy, muddy, and uncomfortable, but central, named after the hero of San Jacinto, General and President Sam Houston. But in 1839, President Mirabeau Lamar relocated the capital again, this time to a frontier site along the Colorado River. He named it Austin, in honor of Stephen F. Austin, the father of Texas. Austin would remain the capital, despite its vulnerability to attack. 7 capitals in just a few years. Though the Republic styled itself as a nation, its facilities were humble. The presidential mansion was a tiny clapboard house, barely large enough to entertain foreign dignitaries. Congress met at Independence Hall in Washington on the Brazos, the very place where independence had been declared. These humble institutions reflected the republic's budget constraints, but also a deep pride in self-governance. Two men dominated early Texas politics: Sam Houston and Mirabeau Lamar. Houston, the republic's first president, sought peace with Native Americans and favored annexation to the United States. He was pragmatic, frugal, and diplomatic. Lamar, who became president in 1838, had a very different vision. He wanted Texas to remain independent and expand westward. He was hostile to native tribes and launched costly military campaigns against the Comanche and Cherokee. Their rivalry shaped the republic. Houston prioritized survival. Lamar championed ambition. Houston was cautious with money. Lamar's administration plunged the republic deeper into debt. This clash defined the political identity of early Texas. The Republic of Texas inherited not only the land of northern Mexico, but also its deep, complicated relationships with dozens of native nations. Far from being an empty frontier, Texas was home to a vibrant and diverse group of indigenous peoples, including the Comanche, Kiowa, Apache, Caddo, Tonkawa, Lipan, Karankawa, and others. The Comanche, in particular, were the most powerful native force in the region. Known for their horse riding skill, raiding tactics, and warrior society, they dominated much of west and central Texas in an area known as the Comancheria. Unlike many other tribes, the Comanche were not interested in treaties or coexistence. They demanded tribute or control. When the Republic of Texas was born, it inherited this tense frontier. Settlers flooded into lands long held or used seasonally by indigenous groups. These settlers cleared forests, built towns, and disrupted hunting grounds, often without regard to tribal claims or traditions. Violent clashes were inevitable. President Sam Houston, who had lived with the Cherokee in his youth and married a Cherokee woman, favored diplomacy. He sought peaceful coexistence and negotiation. Houston knew war with the Comanche or other tribes would be expensive, prolonged, and destabilizing. But when Mirabeau Lamar became president in 1838, everything changed. Lamar saw native peoples as obstacles to expansion. He considered them hostile foreigners, not sovereign nations, and pursued a policy of removal. Under his administration, the Cherokee were driven out in bloody confrontations, including the Battle of the Neches, where their leader Chief Bull was killed. Lamar then turned his attention to the Comanche, launching punitive expeditions into Comancheria. These aggressive incursions led to a cycle of retaliation. Raids on Anglo settlements increased, especially in the hill country and central Texas. Settlers were killed, taken hostage, or forced to abandon their homes. One of the most infamous moments came in 1840, during what was supposed to be a peaceful meeting in San Antonio, the Council House fight. Comanche leaders came to negotiate, bringing a few white captives as a goodwill gesture. But when the Texans demanded the return of all captives and refused to allow the Comanche to leave, violence broke out inside the council chamber. Over 30 Comanche were killed, including women and elders. It was a stunning act of betrayal. The fallout was immediate. A unified force of Comanche warriors launched the Great Raid of 1840, storming across central Texas, looting Victoria, and attacking the port of Linville, one of the largest raids ever carried out by Native Americans on American soil. The cycle of violence had reached a crescendo. When Sam Houston returned to the presidency in 1841, he reversed Lamar's hardline stance. Believing that diplomacy was still possible, Houston reopened negotiations with multiple tribes. He sought not just peace, but recognition of native lands and a halt to indiscriminate military campaigns. In October 1844, Houston signed the Treaty of Tehuacana Creek with several Comanche bands and other tribal groups. The treaty established peace, trade rights, and boundaries between Anglo and indigenous lands. Though not universally followed and not recognized by all Comanche divisions, it marked a significant shift in relations. The Treaty of Tehuacana Creek didn't end the conflict on the frontier, but it temporarily reduced hostilities and allowed settlers and tribal communities alike a brief period of stability. It remains one of the most important diplomatic efforts of the Republic. A rare moment of negotiation and acknowledgement amid a decade of war, displacement, and broken promises. Running a country is expensive. The Republic quickly found itself deep in debt. To finance operations, Texas issued its own paper money, known as redbacks. Unfortunately, inflation soared. By the early 1840s, a redback was worth only about 15 cents in gold. At its peak, the Republic's national debt exceeded $10 million, a staggering sum for a small frontier nation. Land was used to raise money. Millions of acres were granted or sold to settlers and speculators. But the cash-strapped government often lacked resources for schools, roads, or law enforcement. Texas was free, but nearly bankrupt. The Republic desperately needed allies. The United States recognized Texas quickly, but Mexico did not. Mexico continued to claim Texas as a rebellious province. In 1842, Mexican troops twice invaded and briefly occupied San Antonio. Texas opened embassies, called legations, in Washington, Paris, and London. France, Belgium, and Britain eventually recognized the Republic, hoping to limit U.S. influence in the region. Britain even considered a trade deal in exchange for Texas outlawing slavery. But no foreign power was willing to offer military support. Texas was on its own. Life in the Republic of Texas was not for the faint of heart. For the majority of settlers, it was a daily struggle for survival on a rugged, often lawless frontier. Most people lived in log cabins, often hastily built with local timber, with dirt floors and no insulation. Heating came from fireplaces, lighting from candles or oil lamps. Access to clean water was a constant concern, and malaria, dysentery, and cholera were widespread. There were no hospitals, just home remedies, midwives, and folk medicine. Farming was central to life. Families grew corn, beans, squash, and raised hogs and cattle if they could afford livestock. Tools were rudimentary, and weather could devastate crops. Markets were sparse, so barter was common. For many, the Republic wasn't a land of wealth. It was a land of just barely getting by. President Lamar pushed for public education, earning him the title Father of Texas Education. He set aside land for schools and universities, though few were built during the Republic years. One institution that did take root was Baylor University, chartered in 1845 just before Annexation. Founded by Baptist pioneers, Baylor became a lasting legacy of the Republic's intellectual aspirations. Even in chaos, Texas looked to the future. Texas politics were vibrant and often messy. Factions formed around pro-annexationists, nationalists, and regional interests. Newspapers were powerful. They served as both news sources and political battlegrounds, printing fiery editorials that shaped public opinion. Papers like the Telegraph and Texas Register were vital in spreading news across the vast, disconnected territory. Elections were rowdy affairs, with high turnout among eligible white male voters. Corruption was common, but civic engagement ran high. Texas maintained a small army, but more crucial were its militias and the Texas Rangers. These volunteer units were responsible for defense, law enforcement, and frontier patrols. Texas also had a navy. Ships like the Wharton and Austin patrolled the Gulf, protecting trade routes and confronting Mexican vessels. The Navy gave Texas surprising leverage in foreign affairs and helped secure coastal territory. For a small country, Texas packed a punch. By the early 1840s, the Republic was struggling. It was diplomatically isolated, economically weak, and constantly under threat from Mexico. Sam Houston returned to office in 1841 and pushed hard for annexation. But U.S. politics delayed the process. Adding Texas as a slave state was controversial. In 1845, U.S. President James K. Polk was elected on a platform of manifest destiny, expanding the U.S. from coast to coast. He supported Texas annexation. On December 29, 1845, Texas was admitted to the Union. The Republic was no more, but its legacy would live on. The Republic of Texas lasted just 9 years. But in that time, it forged a unique identity, part Southern, part Western, fiercely independent and deeply proud. It was a republic built on revolution, maintained through resilience, and remembered with reverence. Today, you'll still see reminders everywhere. The Lone Star, Come and Take It flags, and that ever-present sense that Texas isn't just a place, it's a mindset. Once a country, always proud. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the Republic of Texas. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Would you have supported independence or annexation? Let us know. Until next time, stay curious.